All right, it is just after 10 to 5 on Newstalk Drive. Good evening to all of you out there. We've talked a lot about houses with the Minister there in terms of houses that were built, but let's talk about houses that were bought, because residential house prices across Ireland has gone up again. No surprise there. Increased by 7.3% in the past 12 months, according to the CSO. They published those figures today. With us now is Dr. John McCartney, the Director of Research at Savills. John, how are you? Good to speak to you.
Hi Chris, how are you?
John, what happened to mortgage deposit ratios and lending rules stopping this?
Well, this was always a white elephant in my view, Chris. It stands to reason that if half of the market is cash that never goes near a bank for a mortgage, then, mortgage lending restrictions are only going to have a limited effect. I think what's happening is that the mortgage rules did initially freeze out some buyers, but critically, those putative buyers didn't go into the ether. They had to live somewhere. So where did they go? They go to the private rented sector. That drives up rents. Mm-hmm. In turn, eventually, that starts attracting the attention of investors, and they pile in and they start competing with each other for a limited number of properties, and they drive up prices through the back door. And I think that's what we're beginning to see now.
So investors have driven Dublin up this year?
Absolutely right, yeah. About 30% of the housing units that have been bought in Dublin over the last 12 months have been bought by investors. So they're a huge part of the market, and they're all buying with cash. So realistically, mortgage lending restrictions aren't going to prevent house price growth. The only way that we can do that really is by building more units and adding to the supply.
John, I was looking at the graph that the CSO published with this at lunchtime, and it looks like a roller coaster, the Big Dipper, and of course the drop is 2007, 2008 when it was down, down, down. It's now going back up another hill, and it has reached, nationally, the average price of a home has reached 70% of that peak. How high up that hill are we going to get? Are we going to come near it? Are we going to surpass it? Or will we stop? I suppose it all comes down to supply.
Yes, I think it does. I mean, on the demand side, there's a couple of notables. The first thing is that Dublin's population in particular is really growing very, very rapidly. It's increasing by about 1.7% per annum. So this just brings, a huge requirement for new housing. Last year, when I say that, I mean in the last 12 months, there have been about 17,600 new households formed in Dublin, and we've only built just over 3,000 housing units to accommodate them. So a tight market's becoming even tighter. So that's going to create inflationary pressure. What we don't have this time is we don't have loose credit. So I think, what we're not looking at is a bubble. In the classic sense that it's, asset prices driven beyond their fundamental value by credit. But I do think that we are in for a period of continued strong house price inflation. I expect that house price growth in Dublin this year will be in the order of 6.5% or 7% by the time the numbers are calculated in December. And I think moving into 2017, we're going to get even stronger house price growth, again, somewhere between 8 and 10% in Dublin. So that's where we're headed for the immediate future.
OK, Dr. John McCartney, economist and Director of Research with Savills Ireland, thank you for giving us that overview. And just one other thing of note around housing. Today on his feet in the Dáil, the Minister for Housing, Simon Coveney, said he has started another report, if you like, but this is an independent audit of something that's been thrown around a lot, the cost of building. So he expects to have it in the first quarter of next year. The charge has been that building costs in Ireland are too high, for example, compared to Northern Ireland. So Minister Coveney says he is looking for this audit to benchmark Ireland building prices against the rest of the EU and certainly some of our nearest neighbours. So he awaits that data.